For this example, go ahead and open up the machine part design file. We're going to be talking about views and sections. Now, by default, when you use your view orientation dropdown, you have all of the standard views. And you'll also notice when you hover over it, you get a preview of your specific model. So we have the top, the front, the bottom, the right, the left, and the back. We also have some isometric options. We have dimetric, trimetric, and isometric. Now, in addition to these, you'll also notice that there's some options up here: New View, View Selector, and More Options. When you use More Options, it pops up this orientation box, which is exactly the same thing. It gives you all the views, the ability to break up your modeling window into multiple dialogues, go back to a single view, and we can do things like View Normal To, and there's also some options down here to rotate and move around. Now up top here we have Previous View, New View, Update Standard Views, Reset Standard Views, and then we have this View Selector option. Now what we're going to be talking about in this video is making section views and also creating new views. New views are often important, especially when you want to make drawings and have specific views available in those drawings. So I'm going to use this dialog box and I'm going to pin it to keep it open. So that way it doesn't reset or move anytime I make a selection. Now by default, we have a top view and a side view. But what I want to do is I actually want to rotate this thing around using my arrow keys. I'm going to move it around twice, hit down, and this is a new view that I want to create. So I'm going to come up to the new view option and I'm going to name this. Now you need to call it something very specific so you understand what that view is and you can go back to it. So I'm going to call this bottom quad and say OK. So now you'll notice that bottom quad is located here. If I go to front view, I can select bottom quad and always snap back to that view. Now the important thing to note here is that this view is created inside this file and is not saved anywhere else. But you do have this option on the right hand side. You can save this view to Solidworks. Now this view will not be specific to this model. It'll be specific to the angle you're looking at your coordinate system. So if we save this view, bottom quad, we can have this view saved externally of our file. So now bottom quad is saved. There's a little globe icon next to it. So now let's go ahead and let's create a new file, just a part inch template, and go into our view manager. Now inside here, it's still pinned open. You'll notice that we have a saved views option. And in here, we have bottom quad. So bottom quad is available regardless of what file we're in. We started a new part file, not associated with the other one at all, and we can still have access to that bottom quad view. Now, the reason this is pretty nice is because a lot of times people that are designing parts design a lot of the same parts. If you're making a lot of the same parts and you have to do a lot of the same drawings, it makes sense to have that saved view available to any of those files. So this is something that can be very handy when you're creating your specific files and creating new views. If you want to get rid of it, if you want to not have it appear in your file, you can deselect it and say OK, and it's removed. If you hit the red X on the right hand side, it'll delete it and get rid of it from SOLIDWORKS. So now let's talk about creating section views. And this is something that has been updated in SOLIDWORKS in 2016, 15, and I believe 14. There have been some new options. To get to it, we're going to go up to, again, our heads-up display and go to section view. You also have the available options to go down to view, display, and you can get to section through here as well. So we're going to start a section view and take a look at some of our options. First, you have a drawing section view numerator that goes with it. Now by default, it's going to increment A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and so on. So we're just going to leave that alone, but if you need to manually create those notes, you can place them in here as well. First, we have two different selection methods, planar and zonal. Now zonal is pretty handy and it uses some very cool options that allow you to show and hide certain areas. We'll talk about that in just a minute. For now, we're going to focus on just a planar, which is a standard type section view. The selection options, we can use reference selected plane. We can select a specific plane that we want. And you also have some options to do things like keep cap color, graphics only section, and show section cap. If you turn this off, it's going to leave this hollow as if it's an empty body. Graphics only section, you see, doesn't really do anything in this case. But we're going to leave the show section cap on because it's pretty handy. Now by default, it's going to grab one of the standard planes, front, top, or right. Now inside here, we can modify this. We can use the widget on the screen and move it. We can move it up and down. We can rotate it, all based on that standard plane. I'm going to go ahead and put 0 in here and 0 for the rotation degree and leave the color as blue. We can do section 2. Now when we have section 2, we can select another plane. For instance, the right plane. You see that it has a different color. This one sections through the threads this time. So this is giving us a lot of very great and valuable information. All the way at the bottom, we can save that view. For instance, let's fit it to screen. Let's go to an isometric view and let's save it. So in this case, I'm just going to call it section view 1, say OK. So now from our view dropdown, we have section view 1. So that means that we can go to front view, we can go back down to that section view. Now if we turn the section view off, we go back to a front view, go back to the section view, you notice that it sections it for us. So this is very handy, a way that you can create multiple sections and go back to them at any point in time. Let's create another section. This time let's use the zoner method. Now, zoner is a very cool option and really it works well with multiple bodies. So we have a single part file. It's really designed more for assemblies, but let's go ahead and play with it just a little bit. When you're dealing with a zonal type option, let's go ahead and add a third section in here. Let's add the top plane. So you see we're cutting through the body right here. And you'll notice that down here we have selected bodies. Now, when you're using the zonal type, and again, this really works for assemblies of multiple components, it allows you to do things like, in this case, not section through a bolt or not section through a certain area. To really show this off, let's just go ahead and just make another body. So I'm going to do a sketch on the top plane. I'm going to take this circle, convert entities, and I'm going to draw another circle offset from it and apply a dimension to it. We'll just call this 95 millimeters. We can then go to our feature tab. We'll extrude it. Let's go ahead and extrude it 100 millimeters, deselect merge results, and say OK. So now we have two solid bodies in our file. We go to a section view, make sure we're using zonal. All the way down here, let's do a third section using the top plane. And under selected bodies, let's go ahead and select the solid cylinder. So you'll notice that now it does not section through the body we selected, but it still sections through other bodies around it. So again, this is very handy in multi-body parts or assemblies where you have things like hardware, you have screws, bolts, washers, nuts, things that you don't necessarily want to cut through, or specific details, things that are running through parts that you need to see and you only want to cut away certain sections. So in the past couple versions of SOLIDWORKS, they've allowed us to do that and it's been really handy. Allows you quick selection process in order for making these section views through your components. So let's go ahead and X out of here. And now that we've made the original section view and we added another part to it, if we go back to it, you can see it's sectioning all of the bodies here. So again, very cool way that you can visualize this and you could pass these section views along, or when you're in a 2D drawing file, you can make new section views there as well.